Alright, time for another draftphysics.com, debatephysics.com also, where there are, 12 or 13 or so 5-minute videos, mostly on subjects related to the kinetic energy formula, 1/2 mv squared, and the sensible contention that it's got a lousy history and it's one of the most unevidenced theories of physics. Shouldn't even be called a theory, frankly. Just bold speculation, a wishful thinking. So all of these arguments are being evaded and avoided by people who claim to be defending something called science. And they are doing it, in such an aggressive and nonsensical way, in the sense that they really are saying, what, you don't think faith is a legitimate reason to believe? I mean, it is as bad as just religious people arguing that they're being logical when the definition of what they're claiming is being unreasonable. And somehow being unreasonable, belief without reason, is logic, when obviously it's anti-logic, and they're obviously anti-science. And that's personally, to me, disturbing and uncomfortable as somebody who is quite devoted to the ideas of science, and recognizing that that isn't our obligation, is to win a fair fight, to find the truth and defend the truth, and to find all these people who are pretending to be like-minded in the sense of having a real respect for the work and the dignity of the human struggle to find the truth. And they are so obnoxious to recognizing their errors, recognizing past mistakes, and giving a damn about protecting the truth, or preserving it, or appropriately finding it. So I will be back because my voice is, went running. It's a little bit rough. Alright, well, that'll have to do. Alright, so the simple argument right now on the table for 5 days is just getting them to simply admit that Newton's cradles work a certain way, that elastic collisions in a Newton's cradle anyway. We will just ignore air tracks and other mechanisms and just talk about this simple mechanism where you have hard, what are called elastic objects, in the sense they don't deform, they don't dent, they don't absorb the energy in some obvious way, or even in some subtle way. Okay, they don't heat up, they don't melt, they don't do anything silly. Okay, they basically can't absorb energy in any other way than moving. So we have two of these hard bodies coming in at 50 momentum. Now this could be different masses, so we'll just say that for the sake of argument, you could make this a 3 mass, you could make this a 1 mass, and we're just going based on what is the mass times their velocity. They come into contact with each other, the collision happens here. Okay, and the argument is because they are elastic objects and they're not going to deform and they're not going to twist and turn and do a bunch of nonsense, that the momentum has to go somewhere. There's no spring here, there's no batteries connected to this, there's not a generator, there's no flywheel, there's no source of friction, there's no place for the energy to go. It has to go back into these objects. Now, the science deniers are basically arguing that no, this does happen. It just stops because this momentum cancels this momentum. That's their theory. Their math says that's what happens. This is minus 50, or doesn't matter which one. You can make this plus 50 and this is minus 50, but because they have opposite directions, it is now a non-existent energy. It yin-yangs or does whatever it does, and nothing happens. Okay. That's their argument. Now, it's ridiculously silly. There's absolutely no evidence Newton's cradles ever have done this. 50 comes in this way, 50 comes in this way, and it just sits there and stops dead. No evidence. And if you did make it stop dead, what there is evidence for is that this gets insanely hot. Not insanely, but it gets really hot. It'll burn a piece of paper. Or if you put a piece of foil there, it'll actually make rings in the foil. You know, there'll be this part of the foil will be annihilated, and there'll be ripples that go right through the foil, indicating the energy is going to vibrate between those two objects until it's all disposed of as heat in this piece of foil. And that's what will happen. So that's the facts. The fact is that we can follow the momentum. It has to go somewhere. And in Newton's cradle, where you don't force the two things to stick together, the fact is the energy comes back out. And the only question is whether it's A or B. All right, depending on the mass, you can have all the energy come back out in one direction in one object, or you can have 60-40 or 40-60 or whatever amounts. Some amount going this way, some amount going this way, but it will equal 100. It will equal this plus this, okay? So in Newton's cradles, the energy always adds. The momentum always adds. It never subtracts. There's no subtraction in a Newton's cradle. This does not happen. It's nonsense. And for 5 days, I haven't been able to find a single person defending science who will concede this is the absolute truth. That this is exactly how it functions. It doesn't function some other way. It doesn't do some other thing. This is exactly what it does do. All right, and it's been proven over literally thousands of years. Swinging objects have been around a long time. Banging swinging objects into each other has been around a long time. It's just nonsense. And in 5 days, not one of these people who claim to be defenders of science will concede that this does not happen. They don't just stand still. They don't just stop moving. They don't subtract their momentums. 5 days. And that's how bad the science is that all these defenders of science won't admit simple truth, because that simple truth implicates that they have made a mistake, and they can't accept that they've made mistakes. That's the truth, and that's not science. That's arrogance, that's faith, that's religion, that's bullshit. All right, so on to some more bullshit. So, I guess we might as well get to it. Physicist Michael is a professional physicist, a doctor, okay, and he makes videos on a university channel. And let's understand the university channel doesn't allow comments. Yeah. So, for all those people who think, we're supposed to be entitled, no. And why don't they? Because the truth is that so many of the people, that even people watching science videos can't show any kind of respect or decency in their arguments. They're just, grotesque buffoons. And they're just bandwagon riders. And they're not playing an instrument. They're just, farting and shitting. And that's the sad truth. And so it should be just understood that it's even worse than, okay? I mean, religious people don't have to turn comments off. To have to resort to turning the comments off is just a concession that they can't even put up a science video without the threat of these morons showing up with ignorant, stupid, nonsense, irrelevant crap. Now, it only has 33 views, so this is, it's not a real university. So this is like some, outhouse they have somewhere in the boonies, okay, where they have a couple of teachers, and most of the subjects are crap, how to tie your shoes. You get a degree in shoe tying. So anyway, so it's a small pond and small fish. Anyway, he says in this video a thing, just one more of these little, this is the crap of science. It's just, show science, lie science, bullshit science. It doesn't really mean anything. And, you know, they've just turned something that should be about the truth into something where they just make up this crap that is just that crap. So it says here, some cosmic rays have phenomenally high energies. He's already conceded that the energy they're measuring is absolutely meaningless. You can't turn a spaceship with it. You couldn't knock down a bowling pin with it. You can't do anything with this fake energy. So when he says it has the same energy, he admits it doesn't really. Because he admits that if I shoot this cosmic ray, well, let me just finish this statement. One event showed a single atomic nucleus with the same energy as a 60-mile-per-hour baseball. He's already admitted that if I shove the baseball out one side of my spaceship and I shove this little magical cosmic ray out the other side, my spaceship will radically turn in the opposite direction of the baseball. The baseball is real energy. The baseball has real momentum. Momentum turns spaceships, not this fake thing they call an energy. So the word energy doesn't mean anything. They've turned a word that is fundamental. It's an elemental function in the universe, and the word really is just garbage now. Because when they say energies, they mean kinetic energies, which is the same as fable, fake, Holy Ghost energy. It can't do any real work. There's no evidence it ever does any real work. All right, and the fact is he's already conceded that, yeah, it won't turn a spaceship. It's fake. Okay, it's insanely fake. The 60-mile-per-hour baseball has 1,000,000 times more momentum than this silly little cosmic ray. That's the fact. And the 60-mile-an-hour baseball is 1,000,000 times more energetic in the sense that it will move more matter in the universe than that little cosmic ray can hope to do in 1,000,000 years. It would take 1,000,000 years for the cosmic ray to do as much damage, you know, that the 60-mile-an-hour baseball does in 4 seconds. It's just absolute crap science. So we'll play it, but it's just crap. It's just a lie. It's an overt deception. I mean, Leibniz's nonsense is just that, nonsense. He won't talk about the history, but the fact is Leibniz had no evidence. He had no good reason, and he was merely fooled because, yes, when something falls in gravity, it takes time for it to acquire its velocity, because it's acquiring it per second units of velocity. And as it acquires velocity, though, it keeps what it's acquired. And that fact means that if you want to go twice as fast, you have to fall 4 times as far. But you're not getting more force for each unit of time or distance you fall. You're just getting it per unit of time you fall. And you fall 4 times the distance in twice the time. Not 4 times the time. It's only 2 units of 9.8. Because it's 9.8 per 1 second. That's the true formula. That's what Newton found and discovered. And these people are just lying that Newton found that it was a second squared, whatever the frig that would be. That it's 9.8 per 1 second squared, whatever the hell that would be. And they won't respond to any of these criticisms of their pathetically unsourced, unevidenced, garbage, irrational, dogmatic babble.
The kind of record particle that was dubbed the OMG particle for how the person reacted when they saw that.
Right. So this is like their God particles, right? This is like all of this stuff is just a religion. They're just rewriting religion, okay? Because they want things to be fun and phantasmagorical. They want to glue frickin' unicorn horns on donkeys. That's all this is.
Detector go off. Had a single atomic nucleus, a single center part of an atom, hit the upper atmosphere with the same energy as a baseball thrown at 60 miles an hour.
So, and again, he's already conceded that that energy doesn't mean anything. The fact is that if you shot it out of your spaceship and you thought it would work as thrust, it won't. It won't turn your spaceship. So in spite of these fake words that it's somehow energy, it can't turn anything, it can't move anything, it can't knock down anything, it can't do anything to defend that statement. It will not do as much work in the universe as the 60-mile-an-hour baseball. It won't be able to interact with as much matter, and it won't make that matter move. It's just fake. Fake, phony, false, not correct nonsense. And they're teaching it. Yeah. It's pathetic. And they won't in any way undo my arguments. So I've made these arguments, I've put them in 5-minute videos. I made it clear how gravity works, that it is 9.8 per 1 second. I've shown how something moves in a gravitational field and how it would be bent. I've explained how when something rolls on a surface and you give it twice the velocity and it rolls 4 times further, that you can simply understand that 4 times the energy didn't go into the ground. So as Feynman would say, the ground is absorbing the energy. The ground is taking the momentum from the object. And the fact is, you won't find 4 times the energy in the ground. And they won't concede, even though it's an obvious fact. Okay, it's a fact. There's not 4 times the energy. They know this. I mean, they know that if I run fast across a scale, I'm going to weigh less. They know that's true. So why are they pretending this otherwise? Why are they defending a theory that really doesn't have a defendable sourcing? It doesn't. There's no evidence here. This is just an accusation that there's more energy. There's no evidence that there's more energy. It's just junk. All right. So can't do comments on this video, obviously. So I'll point out some other things. There's other crap in this video that needs to be debunked. That's just not true that these physicists say, and it's just really irresponsible, and it's junk science. It's been explained and shown how it's junk. Again, we can find Leibniz didn't have any evidence to defend his belief except he believed in solitons and monads, and he thought Newton and Descartes were too atheist. Their physics was too atheist. So he invented this idea, and he called it the living force. This doesn't sound like science, right? Does that sound like science, the living force? Not really. All right, and then it was redug up after the Newtonians buried it properly as poo. Okay, and they properly buried it. It was dug up in the 1720s, 30s. By a woman tutored by a Leibnizian, okay, and she used dented, clay denting, round objects dropped into clay, and it didn't go into the clay, through it, penetrate it. It just dented the clay. So they dented clay with round objects and found that in that experiment you could get 4 times the displacement in an object. But it's just as obvious as measuring how much energy an arrow has by dulling the arrowhead, taking the arrowhead and cutting half of it off, and then saying, well, look, the arrow didn't go as far into the thing you shot, so therefore it has less energy. It's as simple as that. The argument is so bad. It's so unscientific as evidence, and they won't talk about it. And it's the only thing that made the thing. They sold it based on that silly magic trick. That's how they sold this MV squared thing. They sold it to ignorant people hundreds of years ago who really didn't think about it very hard. And the fact is they made a gigantic perceptual mistake and thought this illusion was the truth. And it wasn't. And they will not respond to any of these arguments regarding the history of this nonsense. And they'll just keep lying and saying Newton believed this crap when he didn't. He opposed it. It's a fact. And they keep trying to make it Newtonian physics. It's not Newtonian physics. It's just a lie to put Newton's name on this crap. Just like it's a lie to put Einstein's name on gravitational waves. When he made it clear, no chance. You're not going to hear them. You're not going to see them. You're not going to perceive them. You're not going to collect them. Even the Einstein ring, you know, he said you're not going to see one of those either, and yet they keep showing them to us. All right, big lies. Little character, little mind, small logic, big lies. Alright, back. So, I usually don't read the positive comments because, you know, it's more important to get to the things that are under controversy than whatever. But anyway, it is this basin bass has gone to a great deal of trouble. Trouble I won't go to in terms of trying to counter the rhetoric in these text comments. And so he writes, firstly, I was the one asking the question about coupled oscillators, you know, making the suggestion that why don't you analyze a coupled oscillator and explain where the kinetic energy functions and how the momentum functions. Make a comparison between what's happening in the coupled oscillator with uneven masses. Do we see kinetic energy or do we see momentum? Which one is conserved? Okay, you were the one trying to change the subject about 9.8 meters per second squared, and I've stated before the meters per second squared equation fails when you put a 1 for the seconds. Now, it's just a fact that when Newton wrote 9.8, he didn't write 9.8, it was 16 feet, but whatever. The second was 1 second. The second represents not seconds, okay, or any second or anything like that. It's 9.8 per 1 second, okay? That is the actual formula. That's the actual thing Newton conceived and saw, was 9.8 in 1 second units of time. If it was some other second unit of time, if it was 2 seconds, the 9.8 would have been 19.6. If it was a half second, it would have been this. If it was a mile, if it was this, if it was that, it would have been a different number. It's only 9.8 in 1 second units. That's the facts. Those are the truth. And these liars, okay, I don't know if you can see that board at all. No, you probably can't. All right, I have the 9.8 written on the board. But anyway, just show you real quick. In preparation for this comment, wow, that is way off. But that's way too high, but it doesn't matter. 9.8 per 1 second. That's the real formula, all right? And here they are, all of them, to a man. Every one of these science deniers, frankly, science wreckers, science rapers, okay, are in fact just raping science by not admitting this is the simple truth. This is the real formula. There is no second squared. That happened in the 1800s. This is Newton's understanding. 9.8 per 1 unit of time. And the unit of time was a 1 second. Not any other number. Certainly not anything squared. So it's just a lie, okay, to imply that there's any science saying there's any need to put a square on there. There's no science that said so. Newton didn't get right answers by putting a square on there. He got right answers without putting a square on there. So they're just liars. To a man, every single one of them. Defending science by lying about what Newton said, about what the formula really is. It's a ratio. You get 9.8 meters of this for every 1 second of this. That's the truth. All right. Fails when you put a 1 for the seconds. The point that DS makes, and I do, is that the seconds being squared in regards to falling in gravity makes no sense. It's a fact that it's not the truth. Yeah, that's the truth. There's no squared amount of time. There's a squared amount of accrued distance. The distance is quadratically increasing as you fall, merely because you get to keep the velocity you've acquired. So any velocity you acquire from the force, you get to keep it. So you accrue it like interest. It's quadratically growing interest. But the actual amount you get per second is just 4.9 meters of distance. Okay, and you get 9.8 meters of velocity. That's the fact. It's 2 units of time, 2 units of velocity, 2 units of weight. 2, 2, 2 all over the place. The 4 is an illusion. dumb people fall for that. All right? There's no good reason to think that, oh, this whole part here in the middle, okay, isn't... Let's see if it's on again. No, it's not. Oh, damn you. I have to keep this thing so I can see it, so I don't keep doing this mistake. But anyway, it's this. This is where you're going half the speed. Way up here. Way up here. Half the speed right there. All of this whole section here was for free. That was what the first unit gave you, 9.8 meters of velocity. You get that part for free. There's no work involved. There's no pushing involved. That's just the stuff you already acquired. This little 4.9, that's the new bit you got. All right, that's the second second. The second second just gave you this little 4.9 as actual motion in the universe. The other part you'd already acquired from acquiring the velocity. 2 units of time, 2 units of velocity, 2 units of weight. You only weigh twice as much. 4 times the distance, twice the weight. How do you turn that into 4 times the energy? You only do it if you're trying to build a religion. You don't do it if you care about the facts and the truth. Continuing. I gotta put this back on. Yeah, alright. Okay. Every second you're in gravity, you gain 9.8 meters of velocity. Meters per second of velocity. Okay, but there's no second squared. Meters per 1 second. Again, every time something says meters per something, it's always 1 meter. It's 9.8 times 1 meter. It's whatever times 1 second. Okay, it's not ever... The default is the 1 is there, even though it's not written. It's there as a unit. 1 of the unit. Alright, in regards to my question about the subject, I want to ask is, do you agree that a Newton's cradle conserves momentum? So, and he just so evades that simple question, right? And by conserve, we mean, through the system, as it goes through time, is the momentum substantially conserved? And obviously the answer is, of course it has to be. It can't speed up, it can't slow down, ideally. Okay, so we take air resistance and a little bit of rubbing friction out, and we know it'll go on for quite a long time, that the momentum is in fact conserved. And he's just going to evade this point by disconnecting it from the system. Just saying that somehow it's not a system. Of course it's a system. The system is pushing the objects up into gravity. Gravity is pushing them back down. And he's going to pretend because at any one moment they might not be moving. That means there's no momentum in the system. Of course the momentum is in the system. Okay, if so, why doesn't a coupled oscillator conserve MV? And he'll say the coupled oscillator is not conserving anything. So that's how he'll back out of all of these questions, is to pretend we're only talking about the momentum in the actual object, and we're not talking about the momentum in the system. Can a Newton's cradle conserve KE? Since your logic, there will always be an external force. And of course, there is no external force. The whole idea is to make it rigid and incapable of something else moving. So if nothing else can move but the little balls, then the little balls have to keep the momentum. Alright, another point I want to make, which is very bothersome to me, is why can't you respond to at least one of the 5-minute clips? Well, he'll obviously pick the easiest one then. But they're all good arguments, and they're all arguments about this basic science, and the fact that he's going to claim it's not a scientific argument. He's claiming this, okay, right here. He's claiming that... Okay. This argument, this is not a scientific argument. That's his argument. Me saying it's 9.8 meters per 1 second, that's not a scientific claim. I'm claiming this is half the speed here, okay, right here, of the total voyage. That's not a scientific argument. If I did this as, if I showed you the rolling example, it's not a scientific argument to point out that when this rolls 4 times the distance, okay, it does not put 4 times the heat into the ground. There's no evidence it did 4 times the work. The evidence is that it's getting pushed less per foot by gravity, and therefore it's losing its energy at half the rate here, well, 2/3. This is half the speed here. Get it? This is always half the speed. Anything you roll, okay, you go half the velocity, 3/4 of the traveling distance. A huge giveaway that you did not lose the same amount of energy here that you're losing here. The slower you go, the faster you get rid of your energy to the ground. This is 1 unit of time. This is 1 unit of time. One unit only. 3 units of distance, 1 unit of time. This is 1 unit. This is the real accurate one. Okay. This is 1 unit of time. Get rid of this. This part of the voyage will be identical to this. So this is 1v, this is 2v. This is the same as this, same work done. And it's exactly half the total work here. So this whole section is the same work done as this section. Those are facts. This is a scientific argument. This is what a scientific argument should look like. This is exactly what it should look like. This is exactly how it should be structured. This demonstrates how it functions. These are accurate statements about what is measured as a fact. 4 times the falling distance, only twice the weight. These are facts. And he's claiming it's not worthy of a counter argument, but somehow it's not in proper scientific form. Yeah, it's such an evasion, such cowardice. Amazing bullshit from professionals, doctors of crap, doctors of religious science, theology. He might as well be a theologist, a doctor of theology, because he really doesn't want to do what science is, which is defending your theory. You have a theory that this is 4 times the energy. But you can't explain how 4 times the energy means half the velocity. Way the fuck up here. You're never going to explain that. So, let's see. At least one. Okay, why do I get the feeling you are evading that obligation? Yes, and the simple answer is because you're rational. And it's quite obvious that's exactly what he's doing. He doesn't want to defend his science. His science is, in fact, corrupt, festering, pustule shit. And he doesn't want to have to sit there and explain why he's built a frickin' totem pole to syphilis. Because that's what he's praying to. He's praying to diseased nonsense. He's not praying to anything that adds dignity to human understanding. All right. If you would play his 5-minute videos and respond to them, you can easily point out where he's wrong. Yeah, I'm supposed to be grotesquely wrong. I'm not supposed to be a little bit wrong. I'm supposed to be comparably wrong as a flat earther. Okay? Or a free energy nut, right? But they're actually the free energy nuts, quite obviously. But you are unwilling to do so. Why? And the simple answer is because he doesn't have answers to these points. I'll say this thing, half the velocity way up here, and he won't have a way of explaining how it makes any sense for him to claim, okay, that this is 4 units of force, because it obviously can't be. Alright, so Mindless Marbles replying to something previous to this comment, obviously. Yeah, but anyway. So it's kind of long. I do want to get to physicist Michael does respond down here somewhere. Yeah, all the way down there. All right, so this is gonna, this is, it's just so dishonest, that people like Mindless Marbles. They're just such liars and such, deceivers, and they're constantly misunderstanding and misparaphrasing and pretending, that that's possible. That somehow they misunderstood one of these arguments. That they misunderstood the Newton's cradle argument. They don't understand the simple premise that you can't claim that Newton's cradles do subtraction math when there's 0 evidence that they do subtraction math. Okay. As previously, I also think it would be great if Michael did coupled oscillators with unequal masses, because it's a standard topic in sophomore classes. Is it? Uneven masses are a standard topic? I haven't seen a single person doing uneven masses in coupled oscillators. So it's interesting that you think it's a standard topic. They always use the same mass. Okay. And it would be nice to see it. So I am with you on that. But he's going to claim, I mean, he does claim already that he doesn't have to do that diagram of where the energy goes, because he's going to pretend that the whole system doesn't have the energy in it, that the coupled oscillator is moving Saturn or it's moving Jupiter. It's moving something else. It's not actually just something involved with these little objects in this closed system. He's going to claim the system isn't closed. And that somehow God is doing it. That's what it comes down to. It's just this lie that we can't see that the energy is trapped in the oscillator. We can obviously see the evidence. We can see it. We can just watch the oscillator oscillating for 10 frickin' minutes, and we can see that the energy is trapped in the oscillator. That Saturn has nothing to fucking goddamn do with it. All right. Anyway. All right, good. Regarding KE versus MV, which you'll never do this subject fairly. Okay, this is Leibniz against Newton. That's what it is. All right. And it's not a semantics argument, and it's not some duality thing. Okay, it's a clear opposition thing, a replacement. Leibniz was replacing momentum. He wasn't saying, well, here's this other kind of energy. No, he wasn't calling it some other kind of energy. All right, he was saying it's a replacement for momentum. They are both quantities of motion. So again, it's just silly statement. Two completely different definitions of something can't be defining the same word. It's just ridiculous. All right. But they measure different aspects of motion. There's no different aspect. There's mass and velocity. There's not some other aspect. You're claiming another aspect for which you can't describe, you can't draw it, you can't make any sense out of it. It's a mass moving through space. That's all there is. Your half and your squared are not real things. They're not adding anything to it except woo and unicorn dust. There's nothing. What is a half and what is a square in physical reality? They're absolutely nothing. Mass and velocity are real things. I mean, it's just amazing. You're just gluing this crap on it and then saying there's some special function. It's crap. There is no special function. You have no evidence of the special function. There's just mass moving a velocity, and that everything just shares mass and velocity. Everything interacts with something else, and all it can do is exchange mass and velocity. That's all that can be done. You can't do anything other than share your mass or share your velocity. That's it. You can't share a half, and you can't share a square. It's just absolute crap. Oh, it's just so bad. These arguments are pathetically bad. All right, back. So, just this one sentence is just kind of epitomizes the bullshit here. Momentum takes into account direction. They both have direction in them. Both have a velocity. You have a velocity, it has to be in a direction. We can't measure a velocity in no direction or any direction. It has to be in a specific direction. So this is just baby talk. It's just nonsense, absolute nonsense. You can't undo the fact that velocity has a direction. So it's just nonsense. It doesn't make any sense. What are you talking about? I mean, do I have to draw a picture of something moving? So I have two things in space moving. So he's using the word direction as if direction means two things always have to subtract. So I have two things moving in space and they collide with each other. He's making some sort of argument that somehow they just cancel and stop. We know that doesn't happen. That they're either dentable, that is, they have to dent and crush, or they have to bounce. Those are the only two options. There's no other options. The energy doesn't go anywhere. It doesn't float out into the ether. It doesn't disappear anywhere. It's just absolute lying bullshit to sit there and say that somehow momentum is destroyable or it vanishes or some kind of crap. And it's just crap. I mean, how do you account for this lie that somehow direction, okay, has something to do with a difference between mv with a half in front of it and a square on it? I put a half in front of it and a square on the seconds, I mean the velocity, and all of a sudden now it doesn't have a direction. I mean, that's science? Then no thank you. Then I'm not a science liker anymore. If that's science, if that's a scientific argument, then fuck science in the ass till dead. All right? Why would I want to have anything to do with something so irrational and nonsensically based? You haven't made any argument here that makes any frickin' goddamn sense. Momentum takes into account direction. It's mv. How do I avoid the v part in a direction? How does the direction part change because I put a half and a square? How do I change the fact that it has a direction? It's just such bullshit. How do I sit there and make this argument that the train running down the tracks, the kinetic energy isn't running down the tracks, but the momentum is? It's nonsense. It's worse than baby talk. Okay, anyway, Ke does not take into account direction, so whatever that means. Energy in no direction. Whatever that means. The train's rolling down the track. You say it has 1/2 mv squared capacity to impact something in the direction it's moving, but it's not directional. It can hit anything in the universe. It can move Saturn. It's going down a track heading for a brick wall, but no, it could, yeah, sure. Yeah. Energy could go out, it could be anywhere. Who knows where the energy is? Woo! No, we know where the energy is. We know where it's going. This is just such, it's so imbecilic. I can't believe he puts this in bold, this crap, this tripe, this nonsense. All right, Ke does not take into account direction, but can be stored as other forms of energy. So again, it's not other forms in any other argument than it's other forms that are completely elastic in the sense that you can't make it disappear. Now, heat, you can't store it as heat because that's pretty damn useless. But yes, you can store it in a battery as chemical. You can store it in a spring as a bunch of magnetic, really. You know, the little domains are sliding across each other, and magnetically they're going to rebound. You could do it in a rubber band, which is the same sort of argument. Okay, you're just sliding, proteins across proteins. But it's all understandable. You're storing this stuff, this pressure. You're storing pressure. Okay, and it can be in the form of electron pressure between electrons, or it can be in some more obvious pressure like water. Okay, Ke tells you how much overall speed there will be when you add up positive. Ke tells you how much overall speed will be there when you add up positive momentum. But what does that even mean when you add up positive? So the Newton's cradle is a clear example. The momentum does not subtract. So again, you're just lying about a Newton's cradle. You're lying about what physically actually happens. You're lying about what spaceships do. You're lying about what cars do. He's arguing that I can take solid steel cars that do not dent or deform. I could crash them into each other and they'll just stay here. Because it cancels. This way cancels from this way. The momentum cancels and just disappears. That's his argument. He's calling that a scientific argument, and he's calling me a science denier. Amazing. Amazing bullshit. And nobody will call him out. No one will say, oh, fuck, yeah, he's full of shit. This is absolute nonsense. Add up positive. Okay, momentum tells you the velocities taking into account action, reaction, balances in opposite directions. Balances in opposite directions. What the hell does that mean? Balances in opposite directions. What does that mean? I take 150. The car here has 150 momentum. This car has 50 momentum. They crash into each other and only 100 comes out. That's your argument. It's fallacious nonsense. It doesn't happen in the real world ever. It's crap. And it certainly doesn't happen in a Newton's cradle, you liar. Okay, they always work, but they address different aspects of motion. It's just silly to say they always work. They never are conserved if you move the energy from different masses. It's impossible for them both to be rationally conserved if you move the momentum, the MV part, to a different weighted object. If you change the M number, you have to change the velocity number. In changing the velocity number, you're going to change what's squared. It's obvious they will no longer be conserved equally. Damn, you're such a fibber. Please try to understand what I said above. There's no understanding it. It's a fable. It's a frickin' fable for which you have zero frickin' credible evidence to defend, and I can just keep pointing out Newton's cradles don't do it, spaceships don't do it, all the things that are basic and elemental that don't have catches to them, denting clay and other kinds of bullshit shenanigans. All the simple experiments demonstrate it don't happen. It don't work that way. That's a fib, what you're saying there. Because it's the key to figuring out why they don't contradict each other. So again, it's just such a lie. There is no symmetry between these two ideas. They are completely opposing definitions of the most fundamental and elemental thing in the universe, energy. There are two completely different definitions. Just as the physicist Dr. Michael just pointed out to you that some frickin' helium nucleus has the same energy as a baseball. Okay, even though its momentum is insanely less, 1,000,000 times less. Those two things are in agreement? No, they're not in agreement. There's no agreement at all. You've elementally misidentified the most fundamental aspect of this thing's existence. What is its capacity to change things in the universe? You're claiming this fake ability for it to change things as much as the baseball, when Dr. Michael has already conceded that, no, it won't move a spaceship. It won't move a particle of dust. God, these people are just such pieces of crap. Regarding meters per second squared, average acceleration, so just playing more word games. Who cares? Average acceleration, who cares? All we care about is the net effect. What's the net acceleration? The net acceleration is just 9.8 meters per 1 second. That's all there is. Is defined as change in velocity over time elapsed. You define it. It's a stupid definition, okay? So you can keep playing games, okay, that there's something squared in that, and there isn't. Anyway, so A average equals V2, okay, the second velocity minus your initial velocity, over time. And there's still nothing wrong with that, essentially, except you're going to pretend that the units are not pointers. The units are just pointers. They're just supposed to be used as an identifier that, you know, this is a dot product, essentially. Okay, it's not really supposed to be part of the math. Okay, the numbers has units. So, and again, and you're just going to square the units. And again, it doesn't matter because it's still 9.8 per 1 second. So if you want to say 9.8 meters per 1 second squared, it's completely moot and retarded. So go ahead, square it if you have to, but there's no reason to, and certainly Newton didn't say do it. All right. Has units meters per second squared. The denominator has seconds time, thus basic algebra units. So it's not basic algebra to fake a fake division. Okay. And so now we're back to meters per second, right? Which is just happily ever after, ever after, ever after, ever after, ever after. It's just baby talk. No rational scientist needs to say this to themselves. Per second. No, they don't need to say that. Too silly, too redundant, too obviously redundant. If you don't agree, of course I don't agree. There's nothing to it, okay? You're faking a formula. You're creating a fake fraction, and then instead of putting a 1, okay, to create a fraction, right? If I want to make something into a fraction, I just put a 1 underneath it. I put a 1. I don't put a 1 pen. I don't put a 1 of units. I just put a 1. No units, just a 1. You fibbers. Obviously not just because units and seconds are just numbers. Okay, here, algebra. Okay, so it says if you put a 1 for seconds, it's not 4 seconds, it's in front of second. It's not seconds, it's second. Okay, you still cannot say second squared equals s. So why would I be stupid enough to say? Of course it will. I mean, 1 squared equals 1. Not complicated. Because 1 second cannot equal many other things in different units. So again, the ratio is in seconds. It's not in other units. If you change the units, you have to change the 9.8. So again, just more fake bullshit. It can't be 9.8 if you change the seconds to seconds squared or seconds. It's 1 second. Okay, for example, 1 second equals blah 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 minutes. Would you ever say blah 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 minutes squared? No, I'll never square any of this crap. Okay, I have no reason to do it. Equals 1 blah 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 blah. Again, you changing the units means you have to change the 9.8. So I'm not going to keep arguing that, but it's not 9.8 if you divide the second into minutes. Then it's not 9.8 anymore. So if you do the same thing to the 9.8, yeah, it'll be perfectly fine. Okay, obviously not, because the unit seconds is just a number. So again, it's not just a number, it's a single second that the ratio is dependent on. You can't change the denominator without changing the numerator, kind of thing. It's a ratio, and you're faking the ratio. You're changing the ratio. It's a unit of time, or whatever. And if you still disagree, then apply your reasoning to length. So this is again silly. Okay, if you have an area, okay, so an area isn't a length, 1 meter squared. Are you going to say that the same as 1 meter of area? Well, the verbiage doesn't matter. The point is that 1 meter squared, okay, squaring a meter of distance, a 1, all right, leaves you with 1 squared meter. So yes, it's the same as 1 square meter. It's not the same as just 1. You already put the units in square meters. All right. No, that's illogical for many reasons. Area is not measured in length. It falls apart if you change 1 meter to 100 centimeters, etc. So he keeps changing the argument from the simple argument that it is in fact 9.8 per 1 second unit of time. 1 unit of time in seconds. 1 second. And he keeps pretending that because if he changes that to minutes, and minutes, if I if I say it's in minutes, so I put it in point whatever minutes, and it's 9.8 to point something minutes, that ratio is still valid. All right, so the argument to you is if I put a square on those minutes, all right, and I now create a different number, okay, which will be it won't be a 1 anymore, right? Because you've converted it into minutes. So you're right that it breaks the math, but again, how is that proof that it's not 9.8 per 1 second? I mean, how is that a counter argument against the absolute fact that the unit of time is 1 second? And if you square it, will you get an accurate number? So that's the simple argument. Go ahead, put minutes into the equation, and see if you get the right answer at the end. So it's just proving that your unit analysis is broken, because the fact is you can't change it to hours or minutes, or even change it to the smaller units of time, smaller than a second. That you can't change the denomination of the units without breaking the equation. that's showing a flaw in it, isn't it? Kind of obvious flaw? Yeah, I'd say so. But clearly the math only works because everything's supposed to be in seconds. So I guess that's the argument, that the joules will be in seconds, everything will be in seconds. So if you change what it's in, then yes, you have to change all the numbers. I guess it would be the simple argument that part of unit analysis is understanding you can't use minutes in one case and seconds in another case. You'd have to use minutes everywhere. And maybe if you used minutes everywhere, somehow that would come out right, but I don't think it will. But anyway, it's not a counter argument. The fact is, it is 9.8. The ratio is 9.8 to 1. That's the ratio. The ratio isn't any number of seconds. The ratio is 9.8 to 1. And that you're not counter-arguing. And if you still disagree, then apply your... Okay, we did that. You know your reasoning fails for length and area, but then you apply it to time. So again, there's nothing that fails in the reasoning that it is a ratio and it's 9.8 to 1 second. The fact that you can change the units to minutes or hours and then break the equation doesn't prove that it's not in 1 second units. The fact that your math fails is not my problem. Okay. Okay, let's see. I can see squaring the distance makes sense, but squaring the time makes no sense, especially in free falling. So, the point is it's just kind of obvious. I've made the point. The only thing quadratically increasing is the distance. And it's just a consequence of the circumstance. It isn't the elemental part of it's not showing you the truth. Because it's just a crude velocity. It's not a crude force. There's not more force being added with that increase in distance. There's just the fact that you have acquired a velocity, and with that velocity you will keep acquiring more and more and more and more and more velocity as you acquire more force. And it all piles up. What you got for the first unit of force, the 9.8, you keep. No matter how many seconds you're in the gravity, you keep that 9.8 and you add to it with another 9.8 and make 19.6. You just keep adding. That's the part that's growing, is the part that you've already gotten. How to say that right? Yeah, that's the way it works. You're just measuring stuff that you don't need force to acquire. So if you stop adding force, your velocity will stay at one velocity, and then you'll stop doing the 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. You'll stop increasing how much you're gaining per second, and you'll gain the same amount per second. You'll go the same distance per second because you'll just have a constant velocity. Anyway. Alright, so he says here, the relationship between distance traveled and time elapsed for a constant acceleration is... So again, he's just doing the same thing. Instead of identifying the thing that's actually quadratically increasing, the distance, he's saying that time is, a reciprocal of that. And he's using the reciprocal. But it's only a reciprocal in the one case of the constant force in free fall. It has nothing to do with every other case where you're traveling, say, by a planet and you're going to travel a standard amount of distance. Then that formula won't work anymore because the only thing that's going to matter is how much time you spend in the gravity. And the distance will be irrelevant. There won't be a correlation between distance and time. You won't be able to use distance. Okay, it's a quadratic relationship. So again, it isn't. The time is not quadratic, the distance is. So the square root of the distance is the actual function, not time squared. Time squared is the consequence. It's not the cause. The cause is the quadratic distance increase. So it's just, again, not very scientific to put in your formula the effect rather than putting in your formula the cause. You need to square the time as an intermediary process. Intermediary process. Why? Galileo would agree with this. No, he wouldn't. He wouldn't. I mean, Galileo knows it's the distance that's quadratically growing. That's why he did the whole fucking thing. 1, 3, 5, 7, pointing out how, that's the increase in the distance per each unit. You're getting, it's only 1, and then it's 3 units of distance the second unit of time, and then it's 5 units of distance the third unit of time. That each unit of time you're gaining this amount. And the fact is, if you take the total amount, then it's going to be quadratic. 1 plus 3 is 4. The square of 4 is 2. It's 2 units of time. You just keep doing that over and over again. The total distance will tell you the total time. Okay, it just comes down to how algebra works. Yes, it's weird, so this bullshit. But I don't know what else to say. Yeah, there was nothing else to say, okay? It's all just chicanery, all right? You're just lying about what the real cause is. The real cause is the extra distance being accrued from the increase in your velocity, and it's not an evidence of force. 4 times the distance is not 4 units of force. It's only 2 units of time. Only 2 units of gravitational pressure. Only 2 units of gravity pushing you. That's why you're only going 19.6, because you only got 2 units of gravity, not 4 units. Alright, so he's going to attempt a response, but yes, he probably didn't have any much more luck than I did. Let's see what he says. First off, I'm not going to play with your algebra game. Second, Galileo did not say time is quadratic, but please provide a quote where he says so in his book. Okay, so at least he's calling him on the bullshit. Galileo would agree with this. Galileo wouldn't agree with your physics. Descartes wouldn't agree with it, and Newton didn't agree with it. Newton had the opportunity to see your physics, and he puked on it. He said it's crap. Okay, so just quit lying about what those scientists did and said to try to fake yourself into some sort of reputation. And it's just fake. They opposed your physics. They didn't believe it. They didn't accept it. They weren't dumb enough to be fooled by it. All right. So I suppose, let's see, that's good for you to agree. Physics, Michael should explain how it works, and maybe his own demonstration based on my observation. A coupled oscillator is just like a Newton's cradle. It will conserve momentum, not kinetic energy. And it's quite obviously that we can't even use the word conserve now, because they're going to break that. The idea of conservation of energy is the idea that the energy is in something and it's moving around, switching, bouncing, going around, but it's always in the system. And they're claiming that anytime something stops, it means there's no energy in the system. So the tennis ball bends and we stop right there and there's no energy in the system. Even though we know the tennis ball has been bent and it's going to give back the energy, we'll pretend there's no energy in the system because the ball isn't moving. What a pile of crap. I mean, it's such a desperate evasion of the subject, such a desperate destruction of their own scientific process, where they often say, well, let's just discount trivial friction and trivial air resistance and these other trivial influences and just measure the net products. And they know what that kind of analysis is like. And they're just changing the rules, okay, to evade the argument. The same rules they will take advantage of when they're arguing in defense of some physics they care about. Then all of a sudden the system will be important, and what you can isolate won't be important. So they're just double standard hypocrites. Duplicitous hypocrisy is the weapon of these defenders of science. Duplicitous hypocrisy. That's the game they play. Defending science. Disgusting. Alright, well, I suppose we might as well, since we're just talking about coupled oscillators, I might as well draw it just for clarity and just to make the point, illustrate the point that this is not, as Mindless Marvels described, some semantic argument about two forms of energy or some kind of nonsense. So there's just a direct factual paradox. You can't have it both ways. So a coupled oscillator is kind of a simple idea. You just take two different pendulums, okay, and you create something between them that ties them to each other. Rubber bands, spring, doesn't matter. that loosely requires that they tug on each other. So when this swings, it tugs a little bit on this one. Some of its energy goes in. It dumps energy. So when this one's moving back and forth, okay, it's dumping a little bit of energy into this and then dumps a little energy. So each time it swings out, it dumps a little bit of energy. It dumps a little bit of energy. So depending on the tension of the spring or the rubber bands or whatever you tie them together with, depending on how rigid that is, okay, you can go from it taking 10 swings to dump the energy to it taking 3 or 2 swings to dump all the energy. So you can dump a lot of energy or you can dump a very tiny amount. So you could actually probably build one where this oscillates 100 times, and and over those it takes 100 times for this one to stop moving. Okay, and that's what will happen. This one will stop and this one will have all the energy. So all the energy will be over here. Now obviously, because these masses are different, when you take the energy, all the energy of the system, so you put in some energy, you take the heavy thing and you give it a jolt, that's the energy in, and say it's 100. So it's just like the pendulums, except it's not as direct. The contact isn't as direct, but clearly the argument is are we going to conserve this 100? Or are we going to conserve the mv squared version of it, which will change once it's in the smaller object? Okay, the mass goes down, the velocity goes up, and that means the part you're squaring goes way up. So this was supposed to have it'll end up with twice the kinetic energy. If you conserve the momentum, then this has to be, okay, a squared function, and you're in big trouble, frankly. So the fact is the momentum will be conserved. Okay, this will swing at twice the velocity if it's half the weight, or 1/3 the velocity if it's a 3 times if this is a 3 to 1 relationship. So the higher you make the relationship, and their argument is that it's 9 to 1. You know, the whole kinetic energy comes in with the same bullshit of, you know, twice the velocity is 4 times the fuel, 3 times the velocity is 9 times the fuel, you know, 5 times the velocity is 25 times the fuel, you know, that nonsense. And the same thing would be apparent here. So obviously momentum is conserved and kinetic energy is not. And they should have to account for it and concede that that's, again, the fact. The fact is their kinetic energy theory doesn't work. That I won't see this increase, this 4 times nonsense won't take place. All right, I won't see more energy in this object. Well, what I'll see is too much, right? So if I put it in here, okay, as momentum from the heavy side, then I'm going to end up with way too much kinetic energy here. I'm going to increase the momentum. For the kinetic energy to be conserved, I have to increase the momentum, the MV, and obviously can't do that. So yeah, it's a good thing. This isn't physics, though. It's not science to sit there and analyze this and say, yes, it's kind of obvious. This experiment will show you the difference. One of them has to be conserved. One of them has to be destroyed. And we're not talking about stopping here and doing this or some. We're talking about this system. And the simple fact is it will oscillate for 10 minutes. Okay. So obviously all the energy is trapped in this system. And the argument is what happens? Does the kinetic energy increase, or does the momentum stay the same? When the energy is over here, does it have more energy? Okay, when the momentum is over here, it has to have more energy because of the squared term. So the truth is they're saying this would have more energy. Same momentum, but it would have more energy. Twice the movement here would have to be 4 times the energy. So they're saying this would have 400 joules, for example, and this would only have 200. So when the energy is over here, it's 200 joules. When the energy is over here, it's 400 joules. That's the argument. And they're not compatible. There's no way of saying that these two theories are compatible. One of them is being conserved, one of them is not. That's the truth. And if your energy isn't conserved, then aren't you really conceding it's not real? You can't poof into existence, and then poof out of existence, and then poof into existence, and poof out of existence. Can't happen. Same as the Newton's cradle argument. You can't have 150 come in and 50 come in and then say, well, the 50 here cancels the 50 here, now I can have 100 out. It can't disappear. You can't claim you put in 100, you get 200 out, and then the 200 collides and you'll get 100 out. It's nonsense. And that's what they've turned physics into. They're putrefying physics by attempting to defend what can't be defended, and they're doing it with this irrational crap, and they're just making physics look like a religion. Okay. That's good that you agree that physics, Michael, should explain how it works and maybe make his own demonstration. Based on my observations, a coupled oscillator is just like a Newton's cradle. It will conserve momentum. The system will conserve momentum, not kinetic energy. The system will give you the same momentum you give it, and it stays in the system even with uneven masses for a prolonged time frame. Right, so that's what I demonstrated. I mean, like I said, you put it on your porch, you start the damn thing, you walk away for 10 minutes and it's still going. Clearly, all the energy stays in the system, and clearly, from my observations, there's no sign of conservation of any kind of kinetic energy. Now, physicist Michael asserted it conserves energy. KE, but not momentum. So obviously this would be complete hypocrisy and duplicity, because his argument is anything that stops doesn't conserve. So that doesn't make any sense on its face. Because of external forces, right? And there's obviously no external forces because the system is obviously holding on to the energy. The energy isn't leaking into the environment at anything called a rate. There would be no external forces, just as there is none in the Newton's cradle. I would like to see an explanation about where the energy goes and how is momentum not being conserved. So again, we're back to the Newton's cradle. Again, we know that Newton's cradles, it's a fact, they don't do subtraction math. They don't play your vector game. Your obligation is somehow vectors subtract. Vectors always subtract. No, they don't. Just a fact, they don't. And the Newton's cradle shows that they don't. It doesn't work. And you keep claiming it does when you have no evidence. You can't show me any link to any Newton's cradle or any car crash or anything where non-deformable objects can just stop. And you can just, the momentum disappears. Does it stay in the system? In my opinion, clearly. If not, where does this leftover energy go? There's no, like I said, they can't explain it, because it's wrong. That's the simple answer. It's a silly fable. It's fabulistic, fake, phony words. It's a fake concept. There is no such thing as a kinetic energy. It's not a particle. It's not a thing. It's not a reality. It's a nonsense. Okay. Through the sheetrock into the earth, is there any negative momentum in this system? Yeah, unmomentum. What's happening in the spring in the system? Coupled oscillators. Are you getting extra energy than you put into the system? So again, yes, if you put the energy in with the heavy object, you're guaranteed to make free energy on the other side. It's guaranteed, because you will conserve the momentum, and by conserving the momentum you will create free kinetic energy. That's their theory. Alright, so physicist Michael. Oh, okay, I'm going to be able to take a little break. Alright, back. So physicist Michael. Well, this was a disappointing response. All right, whatever that means. Firstly, I was the one asking, so this is a quote of bass guy. Based in bass. Okay, anyway, and so I don't think it's going to be a direct quote. So, unfortunately, he's not going to quote all of what he said. He's just going to quote sentences out of what he said. Firstly, I was the one asking the question about coupled oscillators, where you were trying to change the subject about 9.8 meters per second squared. It was a simple thing. He just suggested, could you do coupled oscillators? I mean, it's not that complicated, because he's just saying, you know, I'd like to see your analysis of a coupled oscillator. That was what he started this thread with. No harm. My question was originally on the previous claim that you left unanswered. So why is there a counter question? Why don't you just talk about coupled oscillators, or say, no, you're not interested in the subject? That's what you say. I'm not interested in that subject. That's what you could respond with. But instead you're pretending to answer when you're not even answering. I was curious about the answer. Also, did you notice the topic of this video? So this is the duplicitous hypocrisy part. Every fucking comment in this video, okay, let's just say 85% of the comments on this video have absolutely nothing to do with the video. That's an absolute fact. Okay, most of them are just disgusting rags, okay, making fake and phony accusations against me. That's what the comment section is. And clearly pointed on this subject of MV squared. So clearly it's what your commenters are commenting on. So if you're going to sanction him for being off subject, which doesn't seem it's that far off subject. Your subject is pendulums, for fuck's sake. A coupled oscillator is two pendulums coupled. I mean, it's pretty close to the subject, frankly. Anyway, it's just so bizarre. The MV squared equation fails when you put a 1 in for seconds. It is a fact 1 second. I'm just saying it's 9.8 to 1 second. It's not seconds. It's not any seconds, and it's certainly not squared seconds. The point that DS makes, and so do I, is that the seconds... Okay, well, I already read that part. I'm sorry to hear that this makes no sense. So yes, the fact that it doesn't make any sense to pretend it's not 1 second, and that it makes no sense to square 1 second. It makes no sense to you and DS, especially since myself and others have repeatedly and patiently tried to explain. So where did they explain it? Where did they account for the fact that it's not Newton's equation? It was contrived in the 1800s, okay, and it makes no rational sense. Per second is literally baby talk, okay. But that is not data or evidence, and either are your claims data or evidence. Where have you proven it's 4 times the distance is 4 times the force? Where is your evidence? It's twice the weight. You're saying twice the weight is 4 times the force. Well, where's your evidence? Oh, that's right, you don't have any. You've conceded you can't move a spaceship with this crap, this squared crap energy. If you can't move a spaceship with a squared crap energy, what the fuck good is it? Why should I pay any attention to it? It's obviously a fable. Okay, what do you mean by put 1 in for seconds? So he doesn't understand that it's 9.8 over 1 second. Not any number of seconds, 1 second. That's the ratio. He doesn't understand that. He's literally saying, I don't understand that. When it says seconds, just like when it says meter, it's not 1 meter. Yeah, it's 1 meter. It's 1 second. That's the unit. 1 second. Not any number of seconds. Are gaining 9.8 meters of velocity. So it's just no point. He's just talking, he's just using word games to evade the point that it is in fact, the real ratio is in fact 9.8 to 1, and now these liars, these defenders of physics and science are going to try to claim it's not. It's like denying the DNA molecule. They're denying something elemental to this science. It's elemental to understanding what gravity is, that it's 9.8 per a unit of time, 1 second unit of time. Not 2 seconds, not squared seconds. It's only 9.8 if it's 1 second. It's some other number if you change that seconds into anything. If you're talking about physical quantities, you can't just change the dimensions. So you're the one changing the dimensions. You're the one creating some kind of cube of time. There are no cubes of time. And meters is not a unit of velocity. It certainly is part of a unit of velocity. So it's just silly to say it isn't when it clearly is. That's what velocity does. It accumulates meters. It accumulates distance. That's what velocity causes, is distance. So it's perfectly rational to basically say, yes, if we understand the unit is a second, then we can understand that it's 9.8 meters. That's equivalent to saying that you have a mass of 8 seconds. It's nonsense. So again, it's just a lie to say it's equivalent to that. That's not. It's just more of this distorto science. That's not what he did. He didn't confuse an elephant with a giraffe. He made the simple argument that there's no such thing as a giraffe squared. I mean, you're just such liars. Alright, in these videos I have demonstrate methods of accurately measuring G. So what? Who cares? Measuring this, all you're doing is measuring velocity and distance. Yes, that's what you have to measure what the force is. The force will affect velocity and distance. That's what it creates, is velocities and distance. But clearly you're denying the elemental fact that the only thing quadratic is the acquired distance. Okay, the total distance is the thing quadratically growing, not the force. The force is not quadratically increasing. These methods involve taking a distance and dividing by a time squared. Right, and the real truth is that it's a distance, a square root of a distance, that'll give you the time. Not a time squared, it'll give you a time, not squared. Okay, so getting the right answer requires you identifying the right cause. The right cause is the quadratic increase in the total distance. That's the actual thing that is growing quadratically. Okay, this constitutes evidence. You can't try it yourself. This constitutes evidence. It doesn't constitute anything. Nothing about those measured quantities is in dispute. The measured quantity of velocity and distance is not in dispute. What is in dispute is your claim that there's 4 times the energy. That's in dispute. You liar. Okay. You can try it yourself, and the model makes accurate predictions. So does my model make accurate predictions. So it's just a lie. Galileo made accurate predictions. Descartes made actual predictions. Newton made accurate predictions, and they didn't use your formula. Fact. That's an absolute fact. Okay, so just lie some more. No opinion necessary. So again, you do it his way or there's no way. So this is again the hypocrisy and duplicity. We know that scientists constantly are changing formulas and modifying formulas. Maxwell's equations were redone like 15 times. So this is such a lie that you have to do it this way or no way. Bullshit. There's more accurate and more complete ways to do it, and you're not doing it the more accurate, complete way. You're doing it the deceptive way. The relationship between the total distance and the time is not true in except the one case of free falling. It doesn't work in any other case. Time works in all cases. That's what I use to evaluate claims. Well, then you're not doing very good science. I say it's right, and that's what I use to evaluate, is my opinion. That's all he has. He just asks himself if he's right. Okay. Evidence and the ability to model. So the ability of the model, right? So the model is something you can draw. So go ahead and draw something falling in gravity. Point out where it's going half the speed. Draw that in your model. Draw the distance in units of distance, and then explain how it's 4 times the force. Falling, 4 times the distance is 4 times the force. Go ahead and explain how the model works by drawing it. And the model makes accurate predictions. So it's just a lie that it's an accurate prediction. It's not. The model isn't making any kind of accurate prediction. Okay, the mathematical model isn't even saying anything. It's fucking mush. Okay, it's garbage. You didn't talk about the force. all you did is make an equation that allowed you to know the distance and the time, which is going to tell you how much force there is per second, not per second squared. Okay, no opinion. Oh, anyway, that's what I use to evaluate claims. Okay, we already did that. I've given DS plenty of opportunity to demonstrate a method that supports his claim. I just illustrated the method. Clearly, the only thing you need to know is that the total distance, okay, is frankly quadratically grown, and so you just take the square root of that distance and it tells you exactly how much time it took to fall. That relationship is just as solid as your model. Your squared time isn't doing anything different than my square rooted distance. But the only response was insults and deflection. Liar, liar, liar. So that's all they have is lies. Okay, another point I want to make, which is very bothersome to me, is why can't you respond to at least one of the 5-minute clips? One of the topics I'm going to be covering soon, so he's going to make another one of his propaganda shitty paraphrase indirect response videos, the ones where he's too much of a coward to actually take on my actual argument. He's just going to paraphrase it incorrectly and say he proved it wrong. So he's just such a weasel and a coward. All right, is the difference between claims and evidence. So again, this is be more jargon. Okay, the claim is that you are lying to people. You're distorting what kids understand by saying that Newton's cradles, okay, sit there and that there's such a thing as subtracting momentum. That a Newton's cradle can subtract momentum. All right, that's a disgusting lie. Okay, it's not physics. It's not real. It doesn't actually happen. You're a liar. You're lying about the evidence. You're lying about what every Newton's cradle has done for thousands of years. You are a fucking liar to make that claim, that there's ever a circumstance where a Newton's cradle subtracts momentum. So go ahead and lie. This will highlight why those clips aren't even worth responding to. So again, all the arguments in those clips are just like the arguments I made here. All right, half the speed, 1/4 of the distance. Okay, those are the arguments they can't deal with, the arguments they're running away from. Okay, they claim the rolling object is doing 4 times the work, going twice as fast, that 4 times the energy went into the ground. It didn't happen. It's just a lie. They're claiming that when the car going 3 times as fast hits the wall, it does 9 times the work. It doesn't happen. They're claiming the 8-pound bowling ball going twice the speed knocks down twice as many pins. They have zero evidence that that happens in the real world. It's all just crap. And this coward won't respond to a single one of the points put in nice scientific rhetoric. Okay, there's no ad hominems, there's no hostility in the 5-minute videos. They're simple drawings explaining how the thing works. And he's afraid to dissect my argument and point out where I said anything incorrect. He's a coward. This is science. Coward. The 2 words are now synonymous. Scientists are cowards. All right. That which is asserted without evidence. So again, there's just buckets and buckets and buckets of non-evidence on your side. Okay, you have no evidence it takes 4 times the fuel to go twice as fast. You have no evidence it takes 9 times the fuel to go 3 times as fast. You have zero frickin' evidence for any of your fucking claims. Okay, can be dismissed without evidence. It's just disgusting. So everything you say can be dismissed because there is no evidence for it. None of your claims are evidenced. Your claim that Newton's cradles subtract momentum is unevidenced. You don't have any examples of a Newton's cradle doing that. You frickin' liar. Alright, it's like arguing over mating rituals of the Loch Ness Monster. There's literally nothing there worth discussing until some evidence is actually presented to support the claims. Well, isn't that kind of weird? Because, you know, they did put the submarine in and they did catch the picture of the big giant fin. So there is obviously some kind of squiggly thing inside You know, down deep in the Loch Ness, there's some sort of frickin' creature, snakes or eels or something that are pretty fucking big. God damn. What an asshole. Why do I get the feeling you are evading that obligation? So yeah, here it is again. Ha! What obligation? Yeah, I don't have to defend this physics with reasoning. I'll just lie about what Newton said. I'll lie about who Leibniz was. I'll lie about Chardonnay. I'll lie about clay experiments. I'll lie about it all. Because that's all physics is a big, fat pile of lies. I'll lie about entanglement. I'll lie about all the evidence. I'll lie about the editing experiment. I'll lie about the other experiments. I'll lie about gravitational wave detecting bullshit. It's all fucking lies, science. Because he's been such an honest interlocutor to me. Yeah, I was, and then you just posted crap. You didn't respond to a single question I asked with a simple answer at all. And you allowed these fucking goddamn jackasses to post absolute shit in your comments section, and you fucking rewarded them for it. You fucking piece of pus. Okay, I've gone out of my way to respond. How did you go out of your way? You haven't even made a single video where you mention the words draft science. You fucking cunt. Oh, amazing. Do experiments. Yeah, experiments that we've seen 4 million times, okay, and that don't prove the point. All right, that all have flaws in them, okay, defects that can be pointed out when the Newton's cradle is pretty non-defective. So why don't you duplicate the experiment with a Newton's cradle to prove your point? Okay, why? Because it doesn't work. That's why you won't do it. Where's the lever experiment we're still waiting on? And get nothing back but insults. No, what you got back were counter arguments, and you rejected every single one of them out of hand without a single. You didn't play a minute of my video, you didn't play a minute of my argument, and you didn't refute a fucking thing I said. Okay, all you did was dismiss it all. I'm making sure the lever video is finished by the end of the month. Whatever. Because I said I would do it. Oh, I know there have been substantial delays. Yeah, there have been. The idea of any other obligation is laughable. So, okay, whatever. I'm just saying you don't feel the obligation to defend your physics against my accusations. All right, that it's a fake, a fraud, a phony, a big pile of shit, that you have absolutely no evidence that anything takes more energy, okay, that twice the velocity isn't 4 times the energy, it doesn't make something do 4 times the work. It's just a big, fat fucking lie that's been perpetrated for 350 fucking years with no goddamn evidence. That's the actual history I've diagrammed. I've pointed out the actual history, and all you've done is lie about who Newton was. Okay, in regards to my question and the subject, I want to ask, do you agree, okay, that Newton's cradle conserves momentum? So here's where he'll evade the subject entirely. A Newton's cradle won't conserve momentum. So the fact is it won't conserve anything, is what he's saying. Because his excuse is it's not a real experiment. The energy is moving Saturn. Okay. It won't conserve momentum overall because there is an external force, so it's just a lie. There's no external force. It's clear there's no external force. And the only way there can be an external force is if somehow you put the Newton's cradle on a wheels or something, or you dangle it from a fishing line or something, or you tie it to a dog. If you do it anywhere near appropriately, there's absolutely no external forces involved. All right, because there's an external force, the wire attached to the external support, right, with the external support which doesn't move. Okay, the momentum just during each collision will be conserved. So again, he's saying it is conserved between the collisions, but somehow the overall momentum is not conserved somehow. Okay, bullshit. From just before and just after the collision. So what is he saying there, right? The momentum just during each collision will be conserved. The very thing that every single one of your sycophants, these stupid morons, believes is that it isn't conserved. That the fact is 150 comes in and 50 comes in and they only end up with 100 out. Their overt statement is that it isn't conserved. Now, why don't you tell them they're wrong? See, he doesn't see a controversy here when it's obvious there's a controversy. I spent 5 days pointing to the controversy. 5 straight days. Now he's saying, well, yeah, I agree that, you know, with each collision it's conserved. Then how do I subtract 150 from 50 if it's conserved? If I'm conserving the momentum, how do I go from 200 to 100? That's not conserving the momentum. Oh, it's just he's such a lying piece of scum. But this is the pendulum. But as the pendulum swings, it slows down and then changes direction. See, what's the hell is that? Duh, as it goes up in gravity, it loses its energy. Gravity takes it, okay, from it, and it ends up with nothing. And then it has to fall in the gravity to recollect its energy. Momentum depends on direction, so the momentum is clearly changing. So just a lie. The momentum in the system is not changing. We know it's actually in its gravitational potential. So he knows better than this. He's just talking this shit. So he's just showing what a duplicitous hypocrite he is. This is just duplicity. This is propaganda. This is nonsense. He will not describe it that way when he's doing it to his own advantage. When he's describing in defense of his physics, he will not use this catch. He will not evade. Oh, disgusting. Eventually, I will do an experiment on coupled oscillators. Oh, I wonder if they're going to have uneven masses. But I'll probably be focused on more interesting aspects of choice of state variables, whatever the fuck that can mean, and isolate the normal modes of the oscillator. So again, I'll just evade the subject. Okay, the question is how the energy and momentum is conserved. We can more easily and more accurately test that with simpler systems. Right, like fucking air tracks. That's so much simpler. It's only $10,000, right? So yeah, air tracks are so much simpler because they're adding a whole bunch of extra energy to the system. There's lots of external forces in an air track, right? I mean, no duh, right? It's external force all over the fucking place. There's a goddamn vacuum cleaner blowing a bunch of fucking goddamn energy into the system. Oh, he's such a fucking duplicitous hypocrite. If DS and possibly yourself can't accept data, so what a liar. Lie, lie, lie. You have no data. Show me it taking 4 times the gas to go twice as fast. Show me it taking 9 times the gas to go 3 times as fast. Show it, you liar. Fucking data. God, what a despicable creep. Alright, that clearly demonstrates the properties of momentum and energy in simpler cases. It's not simpler. The Newton's cradle you can't get any fucking simpler. No rotation, no wheels moving, no real fucking variables to get in the goddamn way. You liar. Using more complicated system is not going to help. What is complicated? The coupled oscillator couldn't get any simpler. 2 pendulums with a fucking string attached to them. What the fuck is complicated? What a liar. I'm not making these videos for him. It doesn't matter. The point is you're a liar and a shyster and a frickin' piece of shit for talking this absolute crap. Brainwashing people with your nonsense. You fucking religious guru mullah. You might as well just be the Ayatollah. Dr. Ayatollah. I'll tell you what the truth is. I'm the truth knower, and I'm going to tell you what the truth is, even though I have 0 evidence to defend the fucking bullshit. The trivially stupid, goddamn moronic arguments. You gutless coward. But I'm hoping to reach some of his viewers by presenting actual scientific methods. I'm hoping that there'll be somebody with some balls and a little tiny bit of integrity to sit there and point out that, damn, you sure have evaded an awful lot of arguments. But no, there's no character. You all have no integrity, Piro. You're an integrityless piece of scum. That's what you're going to be known as. That's what you're going to be buried as. That's what's going to be written on your tombstone. A fucking shit-talking jackass who had no fucking character or integrity. Holiday hated you for a damn good reason. Based on experiment and data and actually demonstrating how these methods are applied. What a fucking pompous pile of shit. Alright. That's enough for today. Jesus. God, this planet just sucks. You people are just such pieces of fucking goddamn scum. On the bright side, you're proving it. So it's good for my other argument. You know, I have actually a theory, okay, that people aren't worth it. You're not worth it. You're not worth irritating a bunny rabbit. You're not worth a bunny rabbit stub toe. That's how useless and worthless you're proving yourselves to be. You have all this intelligence and all you use it for is to scheme and connive and lie to get what you want. You're just liars and shysters. Puke is all you're worth. Puke squared.